Welcome to the most detailed ZOE guide in existence, with hundreds of clips from ranked games. If you're looking to gain elo, then this guide will help you reach your goals, whether it's gold, plat, diamond, or even higher. Learn how to burst enemies with one-shot combos, hard carry in teamfights using effective strategies, tips and tricks for all abilities, unique mechanics, and even entire mid-lane matchups. This guide includes all the best runes and items from the top pro and solo queue players. All timestamps and details are in the description below. If you find this guide helpful at any time, let me know by giving it a like. I'm Zoose, and let's dominate the rift with the embodiment of mischief and imagination, ZOE. Let's quickly cover her abilities, then I'll mention tips and tricks you can use in your next game to give you an advantage. ZOE's passive, More Sparkles, enhances her next basic attack with extra damage after using an ability. Some passive tips. Her passive is an underrated part of her kit, one of the best ways to deal consistent damage. By the way, it has no cooldown, so as long as you're spamming abilities, it will always be activated. Use it to take towers faster, securing that tower plate in gold. Even your non-damaging ultimate procs this, making it great to finish off enemies. Use it for faster wave clear. Make sure to auto attack objectives too, like Dragon and Baron. Always auto attack in those clutch fights. Sometimes you can miss a Q and E and still finish off enemies with the amount of passive damage from auto attacks and your W, which we'll cover later. Her Q, Paddle Star, is a two-part skill shot. The first cast travels a short distance and deals damage in a small area when it collides with a target. If it doesn't collide with anything, ZOE can recast this ability. It increases in damage the further it travels and will detonate once it reaches the indicator. Some Q tips. You can extend the range using summoners like Flash, and I'll cover them in combos. Because your Q has two parts, it will proc your passive twice. Try to hit enemies when they are bunched up for AoE splash damage. Although it increases in damage the further it travels, there are times you want to throw it forward. If there are minions or other targets behind you that may get in the way, it's much safer to angle it around or just throw it forward. Much better to aim for consistent damage than miss maximum range damage. It has a pretty low mana cost, so don't be afraid to spam it in lane for poke or wave clear. Check brushes. If it stops traveling and makes this animation, you've hit an enemy. Be aware of the sound cues as well. This is what it sounds like when you've hit an enemy. Although Q has an indicator, it goes slightly beyond that arrow. Her W, Spell Thief, has two parts. The first part is a passive. Anytime enemies use a summoner spell or item active, they'll drop a spell shard, which ZOE can pick up and use. Enemy minions with balloons will contain spell shards, but ZOE or her teammates must last hit them for them to drop. Some W passive tips. Just like her main passive, ZOE's W passive is underrated when it comes to damage. Most people think ZOE's threat comes from her EQ combos, but they'll always forget how much passive damage this does. Make sure to auto attack champions to ensure you deal damage from the 3 orbiting bubbles. If there is more than one target nearby, the bubbles will prioritize the last enemy you auto attacked. It applies to towers as well, so if you have W spell ready or almost timing out, use it on the tower for some extra pushing power. Again, it has no cooldown. As long as you keep picking up spell shards, you'll activate the passive damage. If you have more than one spell shard available, try to time them as soon as your 3 bubbles run out. Even if you don't have a spell that increases your mobility, like Flash or Ghost, but you have Barrier, you can still use that active for the bonus movement speed. And a last tip for using your own summoners. Your summoner spells also activate W's passive. If you've just used a W spell shard, wait until the 3 orbiting bubbles have been used, then use your summoner spell, like Ignite, to activate W passive again. The second part of W, ZOE activates Spell Thief, casting whatever summoner spell or item active. She'll then have increased movement speed for 2 to 3 seconds and have 3 bubbles orbit her, which would automatically deal damage to the nearby enemy. So some W active tips. If you want a full complete active list, check out the mechanics section. Save these mobility actives to go to lane faster. In fact, picking up an item like Ghost is almost like getting a free back. Use mobility actives to roam bot or top. Use certain actives to save teammates. When you have a spell like Heal, look for ways to save your teammate. Stepping in front of a Thresh Hook while you have Cleanse is another example. There's more of this in mechanics. Spell shards that drop from minions will last 20 seconds on the ground. Spell shards from champions last 40 seconds. Keep them around and don't pick them up until your current W is almost running out. This way, you can get the absolute max time to hold the next summoner. You can hold onto the shard for 1 minute. Always anticipate enemies using summoner spells in fights and be ready to pick them up and use it yourself. Try to anticipate ways to escape as well. Her E, Sleepy Trouble Bubble, is a unique skill shot that damages and puts to sleep the first target hit. The enemy hit will first be drowsy for 1 second, where they'll gradually slow down and then fall asleep for just over 2 seconds. This can be used through walls on the map, which increase the range. Once enemies have fallen asleep, they are essentially marked and will take extra damage anytime ZOE or teammates damage the sleeping enemy. Some E tips. Pay attention to the enemies hit out of vision. This butterfly animation is exactly the area you want to aim for. These sound cues are also important for landing E in fog of war or in a brush. While E is on the floor, towards the end it will go invisible, leading to some enemies being unaware. You can't really plan for enemies to run into your E at the last second, but you can always be ready for when it happens. Your E lasts 4 seconds on the floor. Aim to block entrances around the jungle and river. Try to place it on the floor in tight areas. If successful, enemies won't even be able to enter the fight, and they'll be forced to walk all the way around, wait for it to time out, or simply flash to go over it. Right at the edge of the brushes are also very effective, as enemies won't see the E puddle on the floor and will be hit as soon as they enter the brush. In lane, look to cast E as soon as a minion is about to die in lane. A quick auto to finish off the minion and instantly throw out E will catch many enemies by surprise. It's a quite skinny skill shot, so even try to aim it through minions when there's a slight gap. Stay behind walls or in a brush around lanes, just make sure you have good vision control. ZOE has so much pressure in these areas. While enemies are asleep from your E, Ignite will not wake them up, so it's safe to use it early, especially if you want to pick up another spell shard for your combo. A good tip with key bindings is to have some sort of option to view the indicators through walls. Some walls are a little deceiving, and you can't be 100% it will go through. A simple solution is to turn on normal cast for E, or have 2 options, where you can have a quick cast and a normal cast. And finally, her ultimate, Portal Jump. ZOE will dive into a portal, blink to the target location, appearing for just under 1 second, and then travel back to where she cast it from. She can auto attack, use abilities, summoner spells, and item actives when she pops out of the portal, but you won't be able to click move. No matter what CC an enemy uses, even a Blitzcrank hook, you'll always return back to your initial portal. Some R tips. This will be your main method to increase the distance of Q. Throwing Q backwards and then QR forwards for increased damage. We'll cover this in combos. Use this to dodge certain slower skill shots. Just be aware it has to be timed perfectly because there is around a second delay. It's very hard to dodge faster skill shots unless you simply predict it. Use it to pick up spell shards further away, and in some cases, be ready to instantly use W. There's example in combos. Use it to check for vision over walls and in brushes. And while you're checking, you can even use it to ward areas slightly further away. Useful for dangerous areas like the Dragon and Baron pits. It's great for tanking certain skill shots for a teammate and return to safety. Just make sure it won't cause you to die. Since you'll always return to the first portal, it's safe to get hooked by Blitz or Thresh, but it must be predicted because of the delay. Ability order. You want to level up your Q first since it increases damage and decreases the cooldown. This will be essential for poke and wave clear. You want to level up E second for the increased initial damage and bonus true damage, as well as the decrease in cooldown. W will be max last as there is no cooldown and can be used as many times with no mana cost. And you want to level your ultimate whenever you can, which is at level 6, 11 and 16. As for which ability to level first, you want to take Q every time you're going straight to lane. However, if you or your team decides to invade, or you anticipate an invade, you want to take E in most cases for the incredible CC potential. Only level E at the last second, as coming to lane without Q can put you at quite a disadvantage in certain matchups since you'll lack wave clear. And of course, there's even an opportunity to take W with an Invade. Considering enemies will be spamming summoner spells in a level 1 teamfight, you'll have the chance to pick up a bunch of summoner spells. A little riskier, but huge potential to dominate the fight. Again, only take W during invades at the last second, or you risk coming to lane without Q. There are some factors to consider on what to take at level 2 between W and E. On one hand, if you take W, it will increase your fight potential if you plan on using Ignite early, since it activates your W passive. Also, a minion could be holding a balloon, and depending on the spell shard dropped, you could have a huge advantage and even bigger potential for a kill early on. However, you also run the risk of having no spell shards drop. There is a 10% chance on enemy minion holding a balloon. By the time you hit level 2, there's usually 5 minions in front of you. That's about a 50% chance one of those 5 minions will contain a spell shard. Basically level W if you're feeling lucky. With E, you have a guaranteed ability to use, however, it's not the easiest skill shot to land, especially as enemies can stand behind minions for safety. You should also factor in the options if your jungler decides to early gank at level 2. You can set up your jungler for a gank with E if they decide to gank early. Whether you take W or E at level 2 is fine, and with testing, you'll have a good feel for what is better. Even pros will change between W and E at level 2 depending on the lane. There are currently 3 major runes selected by most pro and solo queue players: Electrocute, Summon Aery, and Dark Harvest. First we'll cover these 3 major runes and when to take them, then I'll cover all the minor runes and second page options. Electrocute. This is currently the most favourable rune taken by most ZOE players. This rune procs whenever you land 3 auto attacks or different abilities, and ZOE's combos make this very easy to activate. A simple EQ and auto attack in lane deals a nice chunk of damage in lane during a trade, and especially later on when you're looking to one-shot burst enemies. I'll go over effective combos after this build section. Summon Aery is another viable option as a major rune. With auto attacks and abilities, ZOE will deal extra damage. This damage is lower than Electrocute and Dark Harvest, however, the cooldown is much lower. Therefore, in lanes where you need to constantly harass, perhaps against melee or short range champions, this is your best bet. If you're ever unsure, I would recommend Electrocute 99% of the time. Dark Harvest is another viable major rune. You'll have potential to snowball fights and scale well into late game. At the moment though, I rarely see high elo players pick this up. In this current meta, many games are decided within the first 15 minutes, so Electrocute has much more consistent results. However, if you're in a matchup you're confident in and will constantly stack the Dark Harvest, this is a better option. Minor runes. If you've picked up Electrocute or Dark Harvest, you want to take Taste of Blood in most cases. However, you can take Sudden Impact for some extra damage if you don't need the HP sustained from Taste of Blood. Eyeball Collection is great for the extra AP you gain for each takedown you get, but Ghost Pourer or Zombie Ward might be a necessary choice if you want to prioritize warding and vision. For the final runes, you can take Treasure Hunter for some extra gold the first time you kill a champion, helping you snowball and speed up your item power spike. The final option is Relentless Hunter, which will be optimal if you intend to roam around the map. If you've picked Summon Aery, there's actually quite a few options worth mentioning. Mana Flow Band seems to be the most consistent rune for the mana it provides. Nimbus Cloak is an amazing rune for ZOE, as she can activate this anytime she uses her summoner spells, plus all her W spells she picks up. There's just so much potential to be zooming around during teamfights with insane mobility. As your second choice, take Transcendence for guaranteed ability haste, or Absolute Focus for extra AP. ZOE definitely benefits from the extra AP, considering most combos should be full HP. Don't take Absolute Focus against heavy poke teams. Finally, Scorch is the best rune, especially during the early game meta for some extra burn damage. Some second pages. Whether you've taken Electrocute, Dark Harvest or Summon Aery, an optimal second page is from Inspiration, with Cosmic Insight for some summoner spell and item spell haste, and Minion Dematerializer to help you in lanes where you will struggle to wave clear faster than your matchup. Take Biscuit Delivery over Minion Dematerializer if you want to prioritize extra sustain. Another viable second page if you've taken Electrocute or Dark Harvest is from the Sorcery page, with Transcendence, Mana Flow Band, and Nimbus Cloak as your options. Items. Starting items. There are 2 viable starting items for ZOE, with 1 situational pick. Doran's Ring plus 2 HP pots. One of the most consistent starts, providing all the early game stats as well as 2 pots for sustain. Corrupting Potion. This was at one time the most popular choice, however, since the Time Warp tonic nerf, it's not as optimal in most lanes. However, the HP and mana sustain, plus the extra damage from the burn, allows ZOE to trade aggressively in lane. You can even pick up the Time Warp tonic rune if you've picked this start. Dark Seal with 3 HP pots or 1 refillable pot. This is a slightly riskier start as you won't have the mana sustain from the last 2 options, but you can really snowball lanes if you're confident you can get kills or assists. Once you're experienced in lane matchups, test this against easy matchups. Early purchases. Dark Seal. You can pick this up if you start a Doran's Ring or Corrupting Potion, a small AP and HP bonus with the potential to snowball your lane. Lost Chapter. One of your first main goals is to reach at least 1,300 gold in order to purchase Lost Chapter, as it will take care of all your mana and AP needs early game before you finish your mythic item. Mythics. There are 3 mythic choices you'll want to consider. Ludens Echo, by far the most popular with ZOE mains. This item has the most AP of all the Lost Chapter mythics and potential to deal splash damage to multiple enemies with its Echo passive. Additionally, the movement speed bonus allows for better positioning. This is your first main power spike, as you'll easily one-shot combo squishies. Activating this passive 3 or more times in extended skirmishes or teamfights makes it a huge threat to enemies. Everfrost. It provides all the stats you need to chunk enemies, and you'll have Glaciate active to lock down enemies with a snare in the center or slow within the rest of the cone range. It has great synergy with ZOE's E, as you'll have a 100% chance to land a snare while enemies are sleeping. Unless you really need more CC on your team, or perhaps you're after a budget mythic as it costs 400 less gold, I would recommend Ludens in most games. Crown of the Shattered Queen. This is purely a defensive option. With the ability to reduce incoming damage for 1.5 seconds, you'll be much safer against those high burst assassin threats. However, you'll lack a lot less damage and kill potential compared to the last 2 options, so only take this if your team has damage covered. You can always purchase a defensive legendary item if you need. Legendary items. These depend mostly on the enemy team comp and how they are building. Let's quickly cover some scenarios and then solutions. Magi Soul Stealer, the ultimate snowball item. At 1,600 gold or 1,250 gold with Dark Seal, it's the cheapest legendary item in the game with an insane potential to snowball. You'll need to be extremely confident you won't die or you risk losing half your stacks. Shadow Flame. If you're after a power spike with some extra damage from AP and magic penetration at a reasonable price, as well as the added HP to help you survive, this is currently the best item to purchase after your mythic. It's also great to counter champions or teams with shields, as you'll gain the max magic penetration. Horizon Focus. If you want the AP power spike to focus on burst, then Horizon Focus amplifies all your damage after you've landed your E. ZOE's combo synergizes very well, so you can consider this as your first legendary if you need. Perhaps if enemies have no shields, pick this over Shadow Flame. Zhonya's Hourglass. Are you in danger of being bursted, or perhaps you want to make a risky play into multiple enemies? Then you'll want the important active Zhonya's provides with a 2.5 second stasis. You can always opt to purchase the stopwatch early and finish this item later on, especially if you don't exactly need the armor. At 2,600 gold, it's another cheap legendary item you can purchase, even as your second item if you desperately need it. Rabadon's Death Cap. If you ever find yourself extremely ahead, you'll want to purchase the biggest AP power spike available. It will increase your total AP by 35%, so you'll gain much more gold value from this item if you purchase it as your 3rd or 4th item. Void Staff. So you've reached late game, or perhaps it's still mid game, and enemies are stacking a bunch of MR. It's time to purchase the Void Staff. With 45% magic penetration, this will become essential to counter MR and the potential to shred tanks. Banshee's Veil. Are there any skill shot or CC threats stopping you from performing combos? Then you'll want a defensive item like Banshees, which keeps you safe from the first ability, ignoring any CC and damage. It's more effective against AP champions as it provides MR, so you want to rely on Zhonya's for safety if you are against mostly AD. Morellonomicon. If you're against heavy healing comps, then you'll need some sort of healing reduction item to counter them. However, if your support has purchased a Chemtech Putrefier, this isn't necessary. Lichbane. Are you able to consistently auto-attack enemies? Lichbane will amplify your auto-attacks after an ability, making it a great way to deal consistent damage. It also becomes a great pushing tool, helping you take towers and objectives faster. As for boots, there's only one main choice, and that's Sorcerer's Shoes. The magic penetration increases your kill potential early on, and the movement speed will be necessary for a mage champ like ZOE. Ionian boots. This will be your extreme budget choice if you just need to desperately buy something. Defensive boots. In the rare cases that enemies are all AD or all AP, you can opt for steel-plated caps or mercury treads, respectively, as they'll be extremely gold efficient. However, you can still purchase sorcery shoes if you see yourself as the main carry and damage dealer of the team. As for shards, they are practically the same every game, except the final shard. Attack speed as the first shard, as it helps with ZOE's combos and generally activate her runes faster. Adaptive shard as the second choice, and then armor or MR depending on your laning phase matchup and early enemy jungler threat. Summoner spells. By far the best summoner spell is Flash. The potential to flash Q or E, as well as an escape, outplay and combo, is too important to ever skip on this. The second summoner spell seems to be another clear-cut choice, and that's Ignite. It increases your 1v1 potential early in lane, you're a higher threat for enemies in any early skirmishes with your jungler, and just the general ability to burst champs throughout the game with the added benefit of healing reduction. A rare but safer choice is Teleport. When you're in harder matchups and you can't see yourself picking up a kill with Ignite, Teleport allows you to get to lane without falling behind on CS. You'll even have potential to join fights across the map with Unleashed Teleport after 14 minutes. Another safe option is Exhaust against any high burst threats, as it minimizes their damage output within a 3-second window, helping you survive most burst champions.
Throwing Q backwards.
If you're unsure,
however,
I will suggest
times when minions will
teleport
away.
before this final.
Even other enemy champs will try to
There are
body
some
block
rare
it.
cases like Cleanse
They'll
and
usually
Barrier,
do this to
and I'll
protect their
mention
teammates that's asleep. Simply angle your Q around any targets you want to avoid. In some situations, you may even want to instantly pop Q, as it will be harder for enemies to dodge, and you only need a little more damage to finish them off. Pre-6 combos. A quick Q trade. Q, auto attack, Q, and then auto attack. You need to be pretty close and within auto attack range. This can be performed at level 1, making use of ZOE's passive twice and activating Electrocute damage. Main trade combo. E, Q, recast Q, auto attack. If you're able to land the, follow up with Q and then recast it on the sleeping champion. Follow up with an auto attack to activate Electrocute. Just a reminder to avoid waking up enemies with auto attack while trying to land Q. Not only will you lose a chunk of true damage, some enemies will then be able to dodge the incoming Q. Ultimate combos. Ult poke number 1. Q, recast Q, ultimate and auto attack. Simply Q backwards, recast towards the target, then R to close distance and finish with an auto attack if within range. This is great to poke enemies from long range or over walls. You'll also want to use this to clear minion waves, using the splash AoE damage to hit multiple minions. Ult poke number 2. Q, ultimate, Q recast, auto attack. Simply Q backwards, R towards the target, then recast Q and finish with an auto attack if within range. Similar to the last combo, but different timing. Ult poke number 3. Pretty much the same combo as the last one. We can use the same combo as number 2 for a much faster Q combo, which will do less damage but increase the chance of you landing it. Simply Q forwards, R and Q again. Finish with an auto attack. Timing of Q combos. QQR or QRQ, which is better? Surprise factor versus accuracy. QQR has a bigger surprise factor, especially if you're out of vision at the beginning of the combo. By the time they see you appear, say over a wall, they'll have almost no time to react to your incoming Q. If they have vision of you the whole time, then it might be better to use QRQ, as you'll be able to see how they move and sidestep and then throw your Q accordingly. Ultimate poke number 4. Ultimate, Q, recast Q, auto attack. This can be used when enemies are already close, so we're using our ultimate to first increase the distance of Q. Enemy players can usually dodge this easily if they're not asleep, however it's one of the best ways to wave clear and take objectives like Dragon and Baron. CC combo. R, then E. One of the most useful combos. Simply R towards the enemy and look to land E. It's generally a safer gap close than using flash, as you can return back to your portal if you miss and try again later. It's also a much lower cooldown. Useful for making picks and setting up a gank or combo. Pay attention to how enemies move after you appear out of your portal. They'll usually sidestep, so aim your E to one of the sides. Some players panic and sidestep the same way every time, which makes this easy to take advantage of. Here's a full combo that starts with RE. Full ultimate combo number 1. Ultimate, E, Q, recast Q, and auto attack. So using the RE to start this combo, you'll then want to charge your Q backwards and then recast it to hit the sleeping target, finishing off with an auto attack. Full ultimate combo number 2. E, Q, recast Q, ultimate, auto attack. Sometimes you'll land an E first, so instead of using R to land E, we'll be using it to increase the range of Q and therefore increase its damage. This does more damage than the previous combo. Full ultimate combo number 3. E, ultimate, Q, recast Q, auto attack. If you're already close to your enemy, you'll want to use R backwards to increase the distance. Timing is important, so you should start casting R just as they fall asleep, or they'll wake up before Q lands. Flash combos. With such a unique champ like ZOE, flash combos will be very common as her W picks up enemy flashes, so practice these next combos until they're muscle memory. A Q flash. Q, recast Q, then flash. You want to Q backwards first, then reposition yourself closer to the target, and recast Q towards the target, then flash to close even more distance. This will be used mostly to finish off low HP enemies from long range, but it's also just as good to chunk them. The flash right at the end will catch most players by surprise. Flash E. You want to flash, then E. We'll be using this to close distance and catch enemies by surprise. Another combo that's useful for making picks and setting up a gank or combo. Just to note, you cannot E and flash to extend the range of E. You can add any of these flash combos to the previous combos mentioned. For a huge gap close long range poke, we can combine the Q flash with ult poke number 1. Q, recast Q, R, flash, and finish off with auto attack. One of the best and rewarding combos to land. Practice this one for the muscle memory as well as getting a feel for the range. We can use flash with the RE combo to close even more distance. The ultimate gap close CC. R, flash, then E. Amazing potential to make a pick and catch most enemies off guard. And we can add the Q flash combo to one of the ultimate combos for even more damage. E, Q, recast Q, ultimate, flash, auto attack. This is best used when you land an E over a wall and enemies are very far away. Item combos. Everfrost. Here's 2 quick combos, but you should use the active when you think it's best. Sometimes it might even be optimal to use Everfrost first, then once they are slowed, or better yet rooted, follow up with an E. R Everfrost. Close distance with R and increase your chance to land the Everfrost active route. The Everfrost active has a cast and travel time, which means the closer the enemy is, the faster it will land. Trade combo with Everfrost. E, Q, recast Q, Everfrost, auto attack. A basic CC chain combo. Just as enemies are woken up from their sleep with your Q, you'll hit them with the root from the Everfrost to extend the CC. Zhonya's Hourglass. E, Q, recast Q, R, auto attack, Zhonya's. ZOE can activate the Zhonya stasis while traveling in her portal. This allows us to portal in close, even towards threatening champions, execute a combo, and then instantly use Zhonya's for safety. This is great for clutch situations where perhaps you're low HP and risk dying. However, that risk will be negated with Zhonya's. Champs with click target abilities or long range poke are the biggest threat here. Add a W spell or ignite in this combo before you press Zhonya's. Unique combos. Let's quickly group and simplify some summoner spells and active items to use in combos. More details can be found in mechanics on specific items. Speed up actives. Ghost, Heal, Chem Tank, Shirelias. These can all be used to increase distance and damage of your Q, as well as get close to land E. A quick reminder that all W actives will increase your movement speed anyway from W's passive. Dash actives. Protobelt, Prowler's Claw, Gale Force. Use these actives just like you would Flash to extend the range of Q and close distance to land E. Slow actives. Exhaust, Stride Breaker, Chem Tank, Randuins. Slow enemies and increase the chances of landing Q and E. You want to be careful with some of these as you have to get within melee range in order to activate the slow. Smites. Normal, chilling and challenging smites. Early game smite does 450 damage and can only be used on monsters, not players. E. Smite Minion. Throw your E and immediately smite the minion. It will catch unsuspecting enemies off guard. Follow up with any previous combos. Upgraded smites, which are the chilling and challenging, deal 900 true damage to monsters. Chilling smite damages and slows. Use this to slow enemies and increase your chance to land Q and E, or use it for some extra damage. Challenging smite marks a target, applying a damage over time burn and reduce the damage they deal to you. You want to use this right at the beginning of your combos so you can apply the burn passive for the longest period of time. Any smite combo. E, Q, recast Q, ultimate, auto attack and smite. Even though your E won't put epic monsters to sleep, it still marks them for the bonus true damage. This combo could be game changing. Considering ZOE can pick up smite and she has a big burst combo, you have amazing potential to secure or steal objectives like Dragon and Baron. Timing is important. Your combo alone deals around 1k mid to late game, and with 900 true damage from smite, you should aim for the Dragon or Baron HP to be around 2000. Hexaflash E. A small combo used mostly as support. Great to surprise enemy in the brushes around the alcoves. Hexaflash Ultimate E. Further gap close with your ultimate. Double or even triple flash combo. Q, recast Q, flash, and then another flash. With flash on W and your summoner spell, you can double flash to close even more distance. A double flash ult combo. Q, recast Q, ultimate, flash flash. You must spam both flashes really fast, or you risk one of them not going off. Triple flash combo. Q, recast Q, then spam flash 3 times. This is the absolute dream scenario, using your W flash, summon a spell flash, and then picking up a flash spell shard on the ground to instantly use. This is a very rare scenario, but be ready when it's your time to shine. Blast Cone combo. When the opportunity arises, you can use the Blast Cone as a way to increase your Q damage. Q, auto attack Blast Cone, and recast Q. You'll need to be quick to account for the time it takes to auto attack. Her passive. There'll be plenty of times when you walk up to enemies in lane and they'll start walking around and behind their minions because they're trying to avoid your main threat, which is E. This makes your passive, along with your W's passive, essential to utilize, as you'll be able to deal plenty of unavoidable damage, especially around minions. Just make sure to get auto attacks in between your abilities. You'll want to factor in enemy minion damage during this time. Her Q. The absolute maximum damage you can deal on this ability is at 2550 units, which is 150% damage. To put this into perspective, your R combo covers around 2400, which is probably around 130 to 140% damage. So an R flash combo, which would easily get you the max damage from Q. Her W. Here is a list of all the spell shards minions with balloons will drop. There's also a list of all the item actives she can pick up from enemies. Just for clarity, ZOE cannot pick up consumables, trinkets, component items, and a few others. If an item active isn't on the list, then it can't be used, which are items like a redemption, a stopwatch, or Silvermere Dawn. In terms of summoner spells, she can pick up all of them. Spell shards drop in the area enemies use it, usually on the side furthest away from you. Flash is a slight exception where it drops where they blink to, not from the initial flash spot. Be ready to anticipate this. If you have the same spell shard as your summoner spell, using your summoner spell, so for most of us it's D or F keys, they will actually activate your W instead. This is quite useful since it saves the longest cooldown for you. Just for clarity, enemies will always know what W spell shard you are holding, as it will be displayed next to your HP bar. Here's what their perspective looks like. Spell Thief helps your teammates passively. Sometimes fights, for example in the bot lane, get very messy and it can be hard to track which summoner spells were used. Whenever an enemy uses a summoner spell, your teammates can now keep track of summoner spells used since the spell shard will be on the floor. Spell shards on the ground grant sight over a 100-meter radius, which isn't that much. It's a small little vision bonus, as you can sometimes catch out enemies walk over spell shards in Fog of War. However, if enemies use a spell shard or active out of vision, you won't be able to see it until you walk into the vision radius. This is probably to prevent any sort of tracking of smites where enemies are in the jungle. There are times you want to pick up a spell shard but are currently holding one. Zhonya's active is a good example, where using it could actually put you in a vulnerable position, but you want to get rid of it so you can pick up another spell shard. Simply walk over the spell shard you want and click on the ground to pick it up. The spell shard should lightly highlight as you click it. Just walking over it won't swap the spell shard. Her E. Because it lingers on an area for a few seconds, put it in areas before you base. For example, put it in areas the enemy jungler might walk through, as it could guard an area for your jungler for about 4 seconds. If it hits an enemy, you can ping to let your teammates know where the enemy jungler is. Only use it if you feel safe to back, as you might need E to peel. You can cancel the E animation with a Q, E, recast Q combo. A slight interaction worth noting, as it could be useful to land E quicker with a little more deception. Using E late while in R launches your E from your second portal, but it will land at the same location. This is more of a visual than mechanic. It can be useful to catch enemies by surprise, as it will be harder to predict. Even use it to go around the champion in front of your target, or perhaps you want slightly more time before you decide to throw out your E. Most players will avoid your E like the plague. This means in some cases you can hold onto it for as long as possible, as enemies will sidestep it until they are right in your face. Just for clarity, the second portion of your E is true damage, and it deals a maximum of the initial amount. So if the first E does 200, the second part can only deal 200 true damage at max, for a total of 400 altogether. This means using an auto attack on a sleeping target won't activate the maximum damage from the first part. Unfortunately, sometimes your own players will wake enemies. You can use your E through player created terrain. If player terrain connects to terrain on the map, it will extend the range of your E even more. Here's a list of player created terrain that you can use for your E. One of the biggest potentials here is Talia's ultimate, which creates a very long wall. If you hit it diagonally, there's potential to hit a very long range E. Her ultimate. ZOE is unable to basic attack and cast abilities and movement spells for just under 1 second after casting Portal Jump, and half a second after blinking back. Portal Jump resets ZOE's auto attack. Remember to weave in auto attacks during teamfights, objectives, and taking towers. A simply auto attack, ultimate, auto attack combo is a quick way to get some guaranteed damage out. A quick time saving tip. If you're waiting for gold out of base, ultimate backwards into base, quickly buy an item, and you'll save a bit of time. Early game. As mentioned at the end of ability section, Invading is strongly recommended, as ZOE has incredible pick potential with her E. If you can see it's going to be a 5v5, then you'll have a bigger chance to dominate with W at level 1. Otherwise, you want Q for laning at level 1. A great strategy early is to charge up your Q behind the river walls and aiming to hit the backline caster minions. In many cases, you'll stop certain champs from pushing you in early. Pushing in waves also opens up space, increasing your chance to land Q and those important E's. Look for trade and poke combos while the waves are being pushed or even. Certain enemies like LeBlanc will be forced to counter push using her main abilities, putting their abilities on cooldown and leaving them vulnerable to your next poke or trade combo, as they'll struggle to return damage. Mana shouldn't be an issue unless you start spamming E, and you'll have no mana issues once you finish your Lost Chapter. Pushing in waves early will help you get to fights in the jungle and river quicker. You'll have priority in those important skirmishes with your jungler. You may want to freeze waves if you're looking for a flash E so your jungler can follow up, or at level 6 where you can R and E. When you can sense a skirmish is about to take place, look for long range E around walls. Your best chance to win skirmishes is to focus the target you land E on and burst them. Make sure you ping the enemy you focus to let your jungler know which one to attack first. Since we'll be pushing in most waves, we can take advantage of Zoe's incredible poke and harass while enemies are under tower, bullying them with your ultimate. By safely returning to your portal, you should only need to take one tower shot. Use the walls around the towers to catch them off guard with an E, as most players will have a false sense of security being under tower. Your main power spike comes with the Ludens Echo's purchase, or your potential to one-shot your lane or any other squishies is very high. Roaming is another solid option for Zoe. You want to use any W spells you have available before making your way bot, top, or in the enemy jungle. Sometimes you can even have a quick look bot or top and see if there's any summoner spells dropped on the floor recently, so you have options when you arrive. Again, skirmishes or teamfights around objectives like Herald or Dragon are perfect for Zoe. You'll have walls and brushes to use for long range Q-poke and ECC. Don't forget, it can also be your chance to secure or even steal epic monsters mid-game. This is Zoe's time to shine and dominate. You'll usually have 2 to 3 AP items, which is more than enough to burst most squishies, so be ready to catch out enemies. At this point, you should be looking to make picks with or without your team. A single pick can really open up the game, giving your team the advantage to take objectives. This is also the time where you have amazing potential to 1v2, even 1v3, especially if you camp a brush and one-shot an enemy before they even have time to react. Even if you take out 2 enemies and get killed, it will hopefully allow for the rest of your team to pick up objectives and farm around the map. Fights around the river, jungle, or epic monster pits are great for Zoe. There's plenty of brushes and lack of vision to catch players. Pick up a control ward and swap your trinket to sweepers for extra vision denial. Zoe has strong sieging and diving potential, especially with W active spells available or items like Zhonya's. Look to engage spam all abilities and then spam Zhonya's when you start taking damage from enemies in the tower. Side laning is quite risky, but not impossible, especially if you have certain W spells and depending on the enemy team. You lack escapes with a good W spell, so any mobile assassins will easily take you out. Where you really want to be is in the enemy jungle and river areas, causing havoc and pressuring enemy champions. Look to catch out any squishy supports or carries with an E bubble, perhaps over a wall or in a brush, and punish them with a full combo. Try to bait enemies into fighting you when you have the options to get away or survive. You can stall for long enough for your team to come and collapse, using W flash Shards or Zhonya's. I would urge you to close the game out as soon as possible when ahead on Zoe, as your chances to one-shot most champions will slowly decrease once players finish their defensive items like Banshee's Veil, Edge of Night, Guardian Angel, Zhonya's Hourglass, just to name a few. This isn't to say Zoe has a weak mid to late game, but because of her insane snowball potential, it will almost be considered a waste not to finish out games. A lot of the mid game still applies to late game with Zoe, however, you'll be punished much harder if you ever decide to go all in and mess it up. In saying that, one good E-bubble can change an entire teamfight and ultimately win you the game. Keep an eye on enemies who have flash or any important abilities on cooldown, as you'll have a greater chance to wipe them out early in a fight. Try to build accordingly, keeping in mind factors like your team comp, enemy team comp, damage output, and survival item options. There's more details in the builds. Try to remove or wait until enemy item passives like Banshees or Edge of Night are on cooldown before throwing out your E. Like most mages, you'll have a much harder time one-shotting squishies at late game, as they'll be constantly grouped up and finish their survivability items. Again, fights around Barons and Elder Dragons are great since there's plenty of wars and brushes to play around. Remember to finish off your Void Staff if you're going to have any chance of chunking tanks. However, if that's not a problem, focus on more AP items. Teamfighting. ZOE doesn't exactly excel in teamfights. However, she has extreme pressure around Fog of War, brushes, and over wars because of her potential to Q-poke and huge CC from E. Wiping out a squishy target before the fight even starts will increase your chance of winning the overall teamfight. ZOE also excels at cleaning up and finishing off low HP targets. With all the summoner spell and actives laying around after a teamfight, you'll feel like a spoiled kid in a candy store with all the options available. Which also means it's extremely important you never be the first one to die. You should never engage yourself, but usually when your E lands on a target, it will encourage your team to collapse on the first target and start a fight. Some fights you'll want to simply stay back at all costs, while constantly poking and only auto-attacking targets within range. Pilling is another useful option, especially when you have a fed member on your team and you're slightly behind. Save your E for them and use any W spells to save them. Zoning with your E can also prevent enemy carries from entering a fight. Simply place them in tight areas so enemies are forced to walk around, wait until the time's out, or flash over the bubble out of desperation. Although not exactly easy to pull off, you'll want to aim Q when enemies are bunched, for the AoE damage. It's a very small radius, but hitting 3 or more enemies can seriously turn most fights in your favor. If things turn bad quickly in a teamfight, for example, 2 of your carries get wiped out, just get out safely. If enemies start taking Baron or Dragon after the fight, you may look to steal it. Surviving also allows you to wave clear and hopefully give your team a chance to stay in the game and win the next fight.
ZOE's a little unique when it comes to 1v1s in lane. Throughout laning, you should always look to land your E. At level 6, your ultimate doesn't exactly increase your damage like some other champs, but it will make it easier to land E. You'll see a lot of champs take cleanse, so you should always anticipate that one of your E's will be negated. Let's quickly group up matchups into easy, medium and hard. Easy matchups are low threat. You'll generally have an easy time poking them, and you'll have a high potential to kill them if you land E. Medium matchups are determined on how you play. Landing and dodging skill shots will determine the winner. Hard matchups are champions with high threat. You will struggle to 1v1 them. Some of these champs can negate most of your damage and even block your E entirely. Easy matchups. Aery. Her charm makes it hard to go aggressive on her, so only get close when it's down. Even if you hit the first part of her Q orb, sidestep it to avoid the second true part damage. At level 6, she's very mobile with 3 dashes, so aim skill shots right after the dash or while she's asleep. Annie. Only respect her when she has 3 or more stacks under her health bar, which activates her stun, and then go aggressive when it's down. She can burst you at level 6, so Mercury Treads are a great defensive option to counter her burst and CC. She can use Tibbers to body block your Q and E, so angle skill shots around him. Aurelian's Soul. His slow moving Q is the only ability you need to watch out for, and you can dodge it with your R. Either stay outside or close to him to avoid taking his W orb damage. His main threat comes from wave clearing and then roaming. Ward when you can and ping teammates when he appears off screen. Azir. Respect his Q poke range and stay out of his soldier range. Unless he uses his E dash, careful going in as he can counter trade with you and shield some of your damage. At level 6, his ultimate wall can be used to extend your E. Be very cautious if you trade next to him next to his towers, as he can sweep you behind. Lux. This will be a poke battle, just avoid her auto attacks if you're marked. Many Luxes take barrier, so anytime you try to dive her, take her W shield and barrier into account, plus her potential to CC you on the tower. She's all skill shots, so early boots will help to dodge them. Neeko. Her E root is her only main threat, and it will increase the root duration, speed and width if it passes through minions. Therefore, try not to align with minions and go aggressive when it's down. At level 6, you can use your portal jump to dodge her ultimate. Rise. Go for quick poke trades, as he'll win extended trades. You can interrupt his teleport with your sleep. Twisted Fate. Go for hard trades and all-ins when you can. His only real threat comes from his yellow stun card,
followed up by a jungle gank. Try to freeze waves just outside your tower to avoid this. At level 6, he will look to push waves and teleport ult, so keep waves pushed, place wards behind river walls and ping teammates when he is 6. You can cancel his ultimate with your sleep right before he teleports, but it must be perfectly timed. However, he will be asleep when he teleports. Veigar. Stick to EQ auto attack poke. Avoid taking his Q damage as he gains AP from every hit. His cage keeps him safe, so don't all in him unless you can one-shot him. His E cage is also his main threat, as it can be followed up by the enemy jungler. You can always look to all in him at level 6, but make sure you engage at close to full health, as his ultimate can finish you off at around 30% health. His cage is useless as a defensive option, as you can now portal jump inside to get close. Banshee's Veil is a defensive option later on. Vel'Koz. He's all skill shots, so early boots will help to dodge them. Avoid letting him stack his passive 3 times, or you'll take a chunk of true damage. At level 6, look to catch him out and all in him. You should look to catch him out and all in him anytime you can. Keep track of his flash and ping it to let your jungler know, as he's extremely vulnerable. His main peel tool is his E knockup, so go aggressive when it's down. It has a 16-second cooldown. You can cancel his ultimate with your sleep. He's an easy target to hit while he's channeling his ultimate. You can negate about half his damage of his laser ult with your portal jump. Vladimir. Push him in early. Always avoid his 3rd charged Q and wait until it times out. His W pull is only useful to dodge your initial E, however if he gets hit, he can't avoid damage from your Q while he's asleep. Ignite is important to counter his healing and damages him in his W blood pool. Your mana usage is important here, since Vlad is a manaless champion, he will always out-sustain you. His pool has a 30-second cooldown early game. Oblivion Orb and later on Morellonomicon are solid items to counter his healing, probably best after your Mythic and boots. Ziggs. Avoid standing next to minions or he will land Q splash damage. He's all skill shots, so early boots will help to dodge them. All in him anytime you can catch him out. You can at least avoid the center of his ultimate damage with your portal jump. Zilean. His main threat will come when he E slows you and double bomb stuns you, so keep your distance unless you know where the enemy jungler is. Just like most matchups, Zilean is hard to kill at level 6 with his ultimate ready. When he's about to be revived from his ultimate, you can look to land an E on top of him so he's instantly hit once he's revived. Medium matchups. Action. Stay back while your E is on cooldown, as it's your only peel tool against him. Don't trade at close range, as he can absorb most damage with his shield and he will trunk you with his true damage passive. He will look to roam with his camouflage, which can be revealed if you portal jump and get within close range. You can cancel his E rope swing and ultimate with your sleep. Cassiopeia. Back off early when she lands any Qs, as it will be followed up by her E spam. Stay back while your E is on cooldown, as it's your only peel tool against her. At level 6, be ready to face away to avoid being stunned. Her miasma poison area locks you down, so you can't use portal jump on top of it. Corki. Poke safely with EQ combos when possible and try to bait his Q. He's extremely vulnerable without his W dash. Watch out when he has his package, as he will likely go for an all-in or use it to roam. Make sure you ping your team and let them know. He has pretty decent poke at level 6, so watch out for his big rocket, which is every 3rd ultimate and will be displayed under his health bar. Galio. Auto attack him whenever he uses E. Play a little safe while your E is down, as it's your only peel tool. His taunt will force you to auto attack him, so it will wake him up if he times it with your sleep. At level 6, he will look to ult teleport on his teammates, so ward behind walls and deep in lane and ping your teammates. With your portal jump, you can dodge most of his Q damage, all of his E, and even his W taunt if timed perfectly. LeBlanc. Be ready to time your E whenever she's about to W dash onto you. LeBlanc's struggle to push waves unless she uses her W dash, which leaves her vulnerable.
When it comes to LeBlanc's clone, once she reaches 30% health, your sleep animation, as well as ignite, will reveal the real LeBlanc. Her E chain is threatening, so be ready to sidestep it. At level 6, you need to play even safer. Best option is to push waves and roam. Lissandra, you outrange her with your poke. Her main threat comes from her E blink, which will usually be followed up by her W snare, possibly setting up for her jungler. Hard to kill her at level 6 with her ultimate, as she's invulnerable and heals even if you land your E. Push waves and roam. Malzahar, this becomes a very stale lane as he will look to push waves constantly, level 4 onwards. Try to finish off his voidlings to reduce his pushing pressure and force him to use more mana. You must remove Malzahar's shield if you want to put him to sleep with your E. At level 6, be cautious with enemy junglers as Malzahar can simply flash ult to suppress you. Orianna, early game it will be a poke battle. You both have great wave clear, however, you excel at roams and are a bigger threat in skirmishes with your E. At level 6, she's a bigger threat, so best to push waves and roam. Kiana, bully her at level 1 and 2 with your EQ auto attack poke. Avoid her Q poke by standing behind minions and go aggressive when you can. As long as you stay close to full HP, she struggles to ever outtrade you. If you land E, she will be revealed in her Q grass. If you anticipate her ultimate, you can dodge the stun with your portal jump. Silas, keep trades as quick as possible as he will heal most of the damage taken with his W heal. Ignite is a must if you have any chance of killing him, and Oblivion Orb is great to counter him, especially if he maxes his W first. At level 6 he will use your ult against you, which isn't that much of a threat, but an extra blink for him. Syndra, her main threat comes from her long range E stun. Stay back and focus on poking her until she uses her E. You have potential to kill her after some poke. The only real reason she's not a hard matchup is her immobility. Even if you can kill her, she will always return damage with her click target ultimate, so pay attention to how many balls she has on the floor. Talon, you should at least avoid damage from his return W by sidestepping. Always respect his level 2 all in. Just respect his 3-stack passive, which he needs to land both Ws and 1 Q. His main issue comes from his constant E-wall jump roaming, so place wards and ping teammates. Your E-sleep will reveal him in his ultimate. Seekers and Zhonya's are solid defensive options later on. Vex, you should especially try to dodge her skill shots while her passive bar under her health is red, otherwise you're free to trade up close and look to land E. She can negate quite a bit of damage with her shield. At level 6, you can dodge her ultimate with your portal jump. Victor, respect his Q, autos and E laser early on as it's quite an even trade early game. Best to trade when you land E, otherwise try to push the wave. Keep your distance to stay out of his stun field. At level 6, his burst is a threat, so only go for E trades. You'll need to be almost full HP to survive his return damage. Unless you can land E around walls, best to push waves and roam. Xerath, he's all skill shots, so early boots will help to dodge them. Try sidestepping as randomly as possible. Stay behind minions or further back to avoid his E stun and go aggressive anytime it's down. It has a 13-second cooldown. At level 6, look to catch him out and all in him. Keep track of his flash and ping it to let your jungler know. You can use your portal jump to dodge some of his ult damage. You can cancel his ult with your sleep. Mercury Treads and Banshees are great buys to counter his poke and CC. Hard matchups. Akali, keep out of her short range Q and she can't follow up with her empowered auto attack. Try not to go for close trades until her shroud is down. It has a 20-second cooldown. If your E lands, she cannot use her shroud to protect her as it will reveal her location, so follow up with Q. She's a huge threat at level 6, so look to push waves and roam. Anivia, her slow moving Q skill shot is easy to dodge and is her only threat pre-6. You will struggle to kill her while she has her egg passive. Ping egg Nivea or let your jungler know when it's down. You can use your E through her wall to extend the range. At level 6, don't go aggressive on her unless she uses her Q and ultimate.
She's likely just gonna perma push waves, so best to clear minions yourself and look for roams. Diana. If she lands Q, she outtrades you with her W shield as it will soak up most of your combo. You'll have to bait her Q out if you want to win trades. Her Q poke will chunk you eventually, so avoid being hit as much as possible. If you are hit, stay back or she'll be able to E dash to you twice. Stick to pushing and poking at safe distance. Diana lacks escape, so try to set up the wave next to your tower and be ready to set up for your jungler. At level 6, she can and will go for a full combo anytime you get hit by her Q or she has a jungler nearby. You can dodge her ultimate damage with your portal jump. You almost never want to dash into Diana unless she's close to dying already. Echo. As long as he doesn't land his W stun, you should come out ahead or even in trades as long as you land E. Watch out when he appears off screen or comes from a brush as he may be charging his W stun field. Avoid his 3-stack passive during trades. At level 6, even if you land E, he can negate your damage and sleep. After 6, look to push waves and roam. Fizz. You out-trade him early on. Avoid his E-pole jump when you can and go aggressive when it's down. It has a 15 to 10 second cooldown. He can only dodge your initial E. Your sleep is just over 2 seconds while his jump is under 1 second while he's untargetable, so he's only safe for the first half of sleep. At level 6, he's a huge threat and portal jump doesn't do a good job of dodging his ultimate. His roam potential and river pressure is insane, so ping teammates and ward when possible. Aurelia. Play safe to avoid her E stun and you should win most trades. Also look out for her passive once she's reached 5 stacks as she'll have enhanced auto attacks. Respect her level 6 as anytime she lands her ultimate, she can easily combo you from 100 to 0. Stay away from low HP minions as she'll use them to Q dash. Look to land E where you think she'll dash to low HP minions. Kassadin. You'll most likely need to pressure him early before he reaches level 6. His QMR shield will negate a lot of your poke, so try to time your combos when it's down. Get as many auto attacks in early on. At level 6 you should only trade when you hit E, otherwise he can easily dodge your skill shots with his ultimate. Katarina. Level 1 is your only chance to really bully her. She's very slippery at level 2 with her E blink. If your E is down, respect her and stay back. Anytime she E blinks to you, that will be the best time to land E, just kite back while doing so. You can cancel her ultimate with your sleep. Cat players roam frequently, so ping teammates and ward up whenever possible. Lucian. Play extremely safe early on and only go for combos if you land E. Only try to land E while his E dash is on cooldown. His lane dominance means any bad trade and you'll fall behind. Play to push waves, survive lane and take advantage of your teamfight potential. You can cancel his ultimate with your sleep. Yasuo. It will be tough to land E while his wind wall is ready. Angle your Q around his wind wall. You can auto attack through his wind wall while your passive is up. Keep trades short as he will win extended fights. Try to remove his passive shield before you go for trades. Be extra cautious against junglers with displacement CC as Yasuo can then ultimate combo onto you. Seekers and Zhonya's are solid defensive options later on. You can dodge his tornado at medium to long range with your portal jump. Yone. Bully him in the first 2 levels. His E hard counters your E sleep. Even if you land it, he can use his E and recast it to cancel the CC altogether. Only look to land E sleep while his E is down. Most Yones will look for trades when his Q dash knockup is ready and his E is up. His E has around 20-second cooldown early game. At level 6, he will win all-ins with his consistent damage, so only safely poke him with EQ combos. Seekers and Zhonya's are solid defensive options later on. Zed. Bully him until level 3. You should still stand behind minions to avoid most of his Q damage. When he uses his W shadow combo, that's the only time you can go aggressive, as you'll have about 20-second cooldown before he can use it again. At level 6, you really don't want to use your E unless he ults you, as he can dodge it altogether. If he ults you first, he will always appear behind you, so look to land your E then. Portal jump to avoid some damage, and then counter with your Q. Seekers and Zhonyas are solid defensive options later on. So you're interested in learning Zoe, but aren't sure if she's worth investing time on. Perhaps you want to main her, or just want another option for your champion pool. Let's first go over strengths, basically reasons you want to play Zoe over other champions. Then we'll cover weaknesses you want to consider, and after each weakness, I'll mention solutions to counter these weaknesses. Her strengths: insane burst damage. With a full ultimate combo, Zoe can one-shot any squishy out of existence. And on top of that, she can return to the safety of her portal completely untouched. Snowball potential. Leading on from the last strength is her potential to snowball games out of control once she picks up more AP. Dynamic abilities. This doesn't mean Zoe's abilities are complicated, but they are extremely flexible, and once you're experienced enough, you can figure out the right strategy for a certain situation. Are enemies blocking your main target? Angle your Q around them. Maybe there's enemies coming through the river. Aim it through a wall or leave the bubble blocking the entrance. Do you need some extra damage? Pick up that Ignite Shard and use it to finish off enemies. I could probably spend another hour talking about the possibilities of all the W spell shards. Making picks. With a long-range hard CC like Sleep Trouble Bubble, Zoe can make a pick at any stage of the game. Pick out a target, one-shot them, and you'll now give your team the upper hand. A safe first pick. With pretty safe wave clear, W spells, and the option to roam, even a tough matchup can be avoided. Sure, there's still going to be champions you will struggle to kill during laning phase. Fortunately, you have plenty of options to avoid them. Weaknesses. Inconsistent damage. Now, although her main passive and W passive are guaranteed damage within auto attack range, teamfights are another challenge. Getting within auto attack range can be too dangerous, so you'll have to rely on poking them from range. This means landing Q and E is essential if you want to be useful in a teamfight. Skill shots will take time to gain consistency, especially during a chaotic teamfight. There's strategies in gameplay, specifically the teamfight part. Sometimes if a fight isn't going well, then simply retreat and stay alive. Perhaps enemies will force Baron or Dragon and you can look to snipe it. No guaranteed escapes. With no flash or W spell thief actives, she is a sitting duck. Although R is a blink, Zoe will always return to her portal and therefore become an easy target, and enemies will know exactly where to catch you. This is another weakness that comes down to experience, but a good rule of thumb is having at least one W spell ready or nearby for use for an escape. Even anticipating an enemy flash and then using that flash can get you out of an almost impossible situation. If there's no escape possible, simply try to focus a target and combo them. You might grab a kill before you die, or at least chunk them down, and hopefully your team can finish them off. She struggles against tanks. While she excels at one-shotting squishies, she has a rough time against tanky team comps as her one-shot potential goes out the window. Not even items like Leandry's or Void can really help you against 3 or more tanks. This problem is best avoided in Champ Select. Either look to pick something else or dodge. This doesn't mean you can't win against 3 or more tanks, but you'll have to close out games extremely quickly before they start stacking those heavy MR items. Difficulty side laning. Most mid laners have the option of picking up farm on the side lanes, especially if they need to catch up on gold and experience. Unfortunately, Zoe becomes an easy target, especially with enemy assassins around. If you ever need to side lane, make sure you have at least one W spell ready for an escape. It could be a flash or ghost, or even an exhaust to peel off an enemy threat. You still have some chance side laning, especially against low risk enemies and when you're fed, so look for 1v1s when you're confident you can outplay them. Inexperienced teammates. With over 140 champs in the game, it's understandable teammates won't know everything about Zoe's kit. Unfortunately, it affects your W and E skills quite heavily. When grouped up, many teammates won't know or be aware of the minions holding balloons, and will therefore last hit them, causing you to miss a potentially game-changing spell shard. Your best bet is to ping "on my way" or "careful" on the balloon minion that is about to die. Or even let them know, nicely of course, that you need to last hit the minions with balloons in chat. This can vary in elos, as lower elos will still last hit them. Even plat and diamond players will take balloons sometimes. And her E also falls victim to unaware teammates, as they'll wake up sleeping enemies either with low damage auto attacks or spells, causing you to miss a chunk of true damage, and even completely messing up your combo and force you to miss your Q. You can always try explaining in chat or just tell teammates not to wake up sleeping champs if you have the patience. Careful or back off pings as the enemy is falling asleep can work sometimes as well. Support. Most of this guide still applies to ZOE when you play support, whether it's the tips, tricks, or combos. Let's quickly go over some differences as well as pros and cons. We'll start with the differences and the benefits of playing ZOE as support. You can take this standard Electrocute page, just swap out Biscuit and Tonic for any of the runes mentioned in the build section. Hexaflash is a rune to consider for plays around the alcove. For lanes you can constantly walk up and harass, usually a melee support, you can take this Summon Aery rune page. You'll deal more damage than Electrocute with Summon Aery if you can constantly proc Aery with auto attacks and abilities. You want to start with the AP support item Spell Thief's Edge. Aim to proc this as many times as possible to speed up your upgrade and start placing wards. You won't have the same damage in your combos compared to mid, mostly from the lack of gold and levels. However, you'll still chunk enemies, especially if you land an E. You want to play around the brush and alcoves. These make for great areas to control. The small wall will help extend your E range. Hexaflash combos are perfect around this area, specifically coming out of the brush. With your ultimate, you can place wards from safety, whether it's over walls or in brushes. Even a simple R over the dragon or baron pit can give your team plenty of useful vision and information. Players aren't used to playing with or against ZOE in the bot lane, since it's such an unusual pick. This will surprise players who aren't ready for all of ZOE's tricks. You'll have great CC potential when it comes to fights around early objectives like Dragon. She has solid gank setup. A long range E on a wall or flash E should secure at least one kill. Make sure to target and ping the champion you are focusing, usually whichever gets hit by your E, so teammates can focus on bursting that enemy first. Since bot lane will have 2 enemy champions, you'll double the chance to pick up W spell shards. Having a potential of 2 heals, 2 ignites, and 2 flashes in a single fight is huge. Try to chain CC with your ADC if they have some. You'll usually want to land your CC first, and then your ADC can follow up while the enemy is asleep. Let's quickly mention some cons to keep in mind. She can fall behind pretty easily. Falling behind by 1 or 2 kills usually means you'll be a sitting duck, especially against mobile enemies. You'll only have your E and hopefully some W spell shards for some CC threat. I would recommend playing ZOE mid first before playing her as support. She is squishy with no reliable escapes. Bot is a longer lane than mid, so anytime the enemy decides to freeze, you and your ADC will have a hard time picking up CS without the risk of getting ganked. Takes longer for power spikes. As mentioned already, you'll lack the golden levels compared to mid, which means your power spike will be delayed. This means you can't play as aggressive and you will lack pressure compared to other supports. You'll have to take some CS. Balloon minions will offer great spells you can use in lane. Unfortunately, it means you'll need to take some CS from your ADC. The only time I would not take a balloon minion is if it's a cannon and you already have a W spell ready. All other cons mentioned in the strengths and weaknesses section apply here, and they're even amplified in some cases. Bot/AP carry. She can be played as a bot lane carry where you take CS and play with a support. All the mid rune pages in builds are fine, including the items. Most tips mentioned previously in support apply here as well. Just make sure there's enough AD on your team in champ select, or you risk having an all AP team and enemies will usually stack MR pretty fast. At first glance, I wanted to make a quick ZOE guide, but after watching pros and playing her myself, I realized there's so much more to her kit and ended up making this guide that's quite long. Don't ever feel like you need to memorize everything in one go. Use this guide more as a reference where you can come back to certain parts you find useful, then test it in your games. Once it becomes muscle memory, come back again to this guide and try something else.
If I've missed anything about ZOE or you have any feedback about these guides, let me know in the comments below. If you have any champ suggestions, let me know too. I'm Zoose, good luck in your ranked games, and I'll see you in the next guide.